But when you pray, release God from any personal obligation to you. Release God in the awareness that you are trusting that which created this universe to maintain itself, to sustain itself, to sustain its creation. That you are trusting the infinite wisdom of God to be about its own business. That you are trusting the divine love, which is God, to care for its own. Therefore, you are releasing God. You are no longer asking God or trying to channel God in your direction, but you are releasing God. In the end, you will discover that you haven't released God, for God was never imprisoned in your mind or in your desires. Nor was God ever obedient to your will. But you will learn that you have released yourself from these finite concepts of God and prayer. You have released yourself from ignorant, superstitious beliefs about God and prayer. You have released yourself from the paganistic belief that you know more than God and that you have more love than God. You know what your neighbor needs and you have the love to want him to have it, but evidently God doesn't know that he has that need, and God doesn't have the love to want to fulfill it. You know that's not true. But that is the way the human picture seems. That is the way our mail reads often. I have a friend in the hospital who deserves to be well. Won't you pray to God to make him well? Evidently, this neighbor is more wise than God and more loving than God. No, it isn't that way at all. It's this way. God is not the servant of mankind. God does not act in accord with what man thinks God should be or how God should work. If it was left to man, all our friends and relatives would be blessed and all our enemies would be cursed. And tomorrow, when our enemy becomes our friend, we would start praying for them. And if our friend becomes our enemy, we would start cursing them. And we would expect God to be as changeable as we are. It's within your memory and mine when this very thing took place in many parts of this world. Let us give up these childish concepts of God and let us grow up into spiritual adulthood. And remember this: God's grace is our sufficiency. And let our prayer rest there. Not attempting to tell God what God's grace should be or when, but resting in the confidence that God's grace is our sufficiency. Release ourselves from an unsensical belief that we are going to reach some God that is going to do something for us, and let us release ourselves into the rhythm of God, into the rhythm of this universe. And the Master told us how to do this. Take no thought for your life. This is how to pray. Take no thought for your life. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you life eternal. Take no thought for your supply. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you supply. Take no thought for peace on earth. It is God's good pleasure to give us peace on earth. Let us accept it. Let us give up this belief that our wisdom is greater than God's wisdom and our love is greater than God's love, and let us, in silence, accept God's grace. Speech is silver, silence is golden. This is not an idle statement. Idle statements do not survive for centuries. This is a spiritual truth. Silence is golden. Silence is the only form of spiritual prayer. Spiritual prayer never has words or thoughts. We may use words and thoughts to lift ourselves to an atmosphere where we can be still and be silent, but the words and thoughts we are using are not prayers. They are merely aids lifting us. But for our prayer to be prayer and to be effective, whatever words or thoughts we make use of in our preliminary stage of prayer must eventually come to a stop, and we must retire in the attitude of, "Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth." And then, whether it takes a day or whether it takes a year, learn to have those periods of silence until you do hear that still small voice within you and feel its presence and its power. One thing that even our spiritual students often forget: you do not have to go anywhere to find God. You are carrying God around with you. For the kingdom of God is within you. It is not in your mind. You'll never confine God in your mind. God is not in your body. You cannot confine God to your body. Yet the kingdom of God is within you. The reason is that you are as infinite as God. God constitutes your being. God constitutes your life, and therefore your life is as eternal and immortal as God life. For it is God life. There is only one life. Your consciousness is the same consciousness as God's consciousness, because there are not two. There is only one. I and my Father are one. Thou seest me, thou seest the Father that sent me. There is only one life here. There is only one consciousness here. There is only one soul here. This is infinite. Therefore, it is the soul of man that embraces God. The consciousness of man contains God. The life of man is the life of God. Not a bit of it, not a part of it, all of it. Son, all that I have is thine. Son, all of my life is thy life. Son, all of my wisdom is thy wisdom. Son, all of my strength is thy strength. Then to pray aright is to release God from any obligation to give you more than you now have. True prayer is a realization of God constituting your being, God as your life, God as the very I of your being. Therefore, that I, which is my true identity, has been given the dominion of God, the grace of God, the glory of God. For all that the Father is, the Son is. For God is the Father and God is the Son. For these are one, not two. These are one, God is the Father and God is the Son. And all that God the Father is, God the Son is. And all that God the Father has, God the Son has. As we realize that, this realization, or really this preparation for prayer, enables us now to be still and let God's grace work in us and through us. Let God's grace be our meat and wine and water. Remember that. I in the midst of you, this I that you declare in the midst of you, this already has your meat and your wine and your water. This already has all that the Father has, and therefore be still. Be still and know that I is God. And let God function. Be still and know that I is God, and let I function. No words, no thoughts, let it be. And to pray without ceasing is to walk around all day long in your business, in your art, your profession, your home, rejoicing in the fact that I in the midst of me is God. And all that the Father hath is mine. And the grace of God is working in me and through me without me telling God, asking God, pleading with God. Just being still and knowing that I in the midst of me is God. Be still. You are not praying until you are still. You are not praying while you have a desire. You say, is it wrong to desire health? Heavens, no. It's your birthright. The wrong is in desiring God to give it to you. When God has already given it to you, and in stillness you will demonstrate it, realize it, manifest it, evidence it, show it forth. You separate yourself from your good when you desire anything of God. When you seek anything of God, you are setting up a sense of separation from it. Take no thought for your supply, take no thought for your health, and you will find that you will manifest these. They will come through into expression. The moment you take thought about them and pray to have them overcome, you are setting up a sense of separation.